It didn't explode with a dramatic boom. It simply ceased to exist. Buried deep beneath the ancient limestone ridges of the Strait of Hormuz sat the most heavily guarded military brain in the entire Middle East, a command center that took 4 decades and billions of dollars to construct, and in the span of just 94 seconds, it was gone, not damaged, not wounded, erased. The radar screens never flashed a warning, the operators never scrambled, the S-300 missile batteries never even twitched. 4 decades of paranoid, obsessive investment vaporized before a single alarm could blink to life. This is the story of how the most fortified fortress in the region fell from a sky it never even saw coming. To understand why that command center died, while its crew was still sipping their morning tea, you have to travel upward, not a few thousand feet, not even into the upper atmosphere. You have to go 22,000 miles above the surface of this earth, because that is where this story truly begins. While Iranian crews were busy preparing their missiles inside bunkers, they believed were completely invisible to the outside world. Something was already watching them. Not a spy plane, not a drone, something far colder, far more patient, and infinitely more dangerous. The United States Space Force, established in 2019, is not about rockets and astronauts taking photographs from a window. This branch exists for one single purpose: total awareness. The Americans have quietly deployed a constellation of satellites packed with infrared sensors, so extraordinarily sensitive that they can detect a heat signature no larger than the glowing tip of a cigarette from a distance of 240 miles. Think about what that actually means. Imagine standing on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., and being able to see a single match being struck in Times Square, New York. That is the level of vision we are talking about. The moment an Iranian crew began the process of fueling and preparing a ballistic missile for launch, they were already glowing like a bright, unmistakable bonfire on a high-definition screen inside a windowless room somewhere in the American heartland. That information does not sit and wait. It travels at the speed of light. It flows directly into massive ground stations, those giant white dome-shaped structures scattered across American and Allied soil, where computers processing information in nanoseconds immediately begin generating a precise coordinate set. That coordinate set is then fed directly into weapon systems positioned thousands of miles away. The target is already locked before the enemy crew has even finished their pre-launch checklist. They thought they were hidden. They were already marked for destruction. But seeing the enemy is only half of the equation. The other half is making sure the enemy cannot see you. And this is where the United States Cyber Command and the Israeli Defense Forces Joint Cyber Unit enter the picture. Their mission was not to blow anything up, not yet. Their mission was far more surgical and far more terrifying. The goal was to make the enemy's machines stop talking to each other, to sever every digital nerve in the Iranian defense network before a single physical weapon was ever launched. At the center of Iran's air defense architecture sat the Mirage 4 radar system, a piece of technology their commanders boasted could detect targets across a 240-mile radius and outperform even the Russian S-400. Impressive on paper, but by the time the operation began, that radar system was no longer reporting reality. It was reporting a hallucination. American and Israeli cyber operators had silently inserted themselves deep into the communication lines of the Iranian defense network and begun feeding false data directly into their screens. A battery commander on the northern edge of the engagement zone was staring at a perfectly calm and empty sky. His counterpart stationed just 5 miles away was watching 500 Phantom aircraft descending on his position simultaneously. Both screens were lies, and neither commander knew it. Then at 1:30 in the morning, the physical dimension of the operation began, but not in the way the Iranian Revolutionary Guard expected. From the bomb bays of B-52 Stratofortress heavy bombers quietly loitering in international airspace, waves of ADM-160 mauled decoys were released into the darkness. These are 300-pound electronic ghosts with wings, each one equipped with a signature system that mimics the exact radar profile of a B-1B Lancer or an F-15E Strike Eagle. To the panicking Iranian operators staring at their already compromised screens, it looked like a massive, coordinated American air assault was descending on them from multiple directions simultaneously. Their training manuals gave them only one acceptable response to a threat of that magnitude: fire everything you have. And they did exactly that. In the bunkers beneath the desert, launch buttons were pressed. Interceptor missiles worth $2 million each began screaming into the night sky, chasing decoys made of plastic, glass, and circuit boards that cost roughly as much as a used pickup truck. For the next 30 minutes, the Iranian military burned through 40 years of accumulated strategic firepower, shooting down ghosts. And every single time they fired, they did something catastrophic without realizing it. Every missile launch lit up the sky with a massive thermal bloom. Every radar system that activated to guide those interceptors became a glowing beacon, broadcasting its exact location to the kill web watching from above. They were trapped in a perfect dilemma. Their only option for defending themselves was also the very action that guaranteed their complete destruction. Because once that digital handshake between the Space Force satellite and the weapon system was confirmed, the kill web activated as a single unified organism. Data from a satellite 22,000 miles above the Earth was simultaneously streaming into the cockpit of an Israeli F-35C Lightning II and the Combat Information Center of a U.S. Arleigh Burke-class destroyer positioned in the Gulf. The F-35 did not function simply as a fighter jet in this operation. It functioned as an airborne quarterback, assigning targets in real time, identifying gaps in the Iranian defense, coordinating simultaneous strikes across multiple domains, faster than any human command structure could ever hope to react to. And then came the question that defined the entire operation. How do you find one real target hiding among 10,000 convincing fakes? How does a pilot or a targeting computer know which truck is carrying an irreplaceable ballistic missile and which one is a $30,000 decoy constructed from plywood, silver paint, and heat lamps? That answer belongs to Project Maven and the artificial intelligence systems that power it. The United States military is currently using AI platforms to sift through a literal ocean of sensor data in real time. A human analyst examining satellite imagery to find a pattern might need days of work before reaching a conclusion, days during which the missile gets launched and the truck disappears. For the algorithm, that same analysis takes seconds. The AI dismissed the plywood decoys instantly because it could calculate that they lacked the thermal mass of a real engine. It identified the precise underground nodes where the regime had hidden its most valuable hardware. Iranian soldiers moved launchers in the middle of the night during blinding sandstorms, genuinely believing that the weather was their protection. The Space Force satellites looked straight through the sand like it was clear glass, and the AI calculated the exact wind compensation required for a small diameter bomb before the pilot even had to consider the release point. The scale of what unfolded is almost impossible to process. By the 13th day of the operation, over 15,000 individual targets had been identified, verified, and destroyed. That means that every 4 hours, a fresh set of 1,000 targets was being located, confirmed, and eliminated. The Iranian strategy began with a massive surge on day one. 167 ballistic missiles and 541 drones launched in a desperate attempt to overwhelm the system and find a crack in the wall. Every single one was handled. By day 15, that enormous opening salvo had been ground down to just 4 missiles and 6 drones, not because they chose to slow down, because there was almost nothing left to fire. Every time an Iranian crew moved a launcher into an open position, the eye in space was already transmitting coordinates. Before the stabilizing jacks on the truck could even touch the ground, a standoff missile launched from an FA-18 Super Hornet was already inbound at Mach 1.5. Iran had spent years and billions of dollars, money taken directly from the Iranian people, building a ballistic missile stockpile they believed exceeded 2,000 units. They were convinced that the sheer volume of firepower would make the cost of intervention politically unbearable for the American public. Instead, they found themselves spending $3 million per missile that got intercepted cleanly, while the United States was dismantling their entire launch infrastructure with $35,000 small diameter bombs. It was a heavyweight fighter being put on the floor by a single perfectly placed needle. Within the first 24 hours of the operation, 80% of Iran's integrated air defense network had been taken offline. Not through a massive carpet bombing campaign, not through overwhelming numbers of aircraft filling the sky, through satellites, through silent cyber intrusions that happen faster than human awareness, through artificial intelligence that thinks in fractions of seconds. They walked into a 21st century space war carrying a 20th century strategy, and they discovered far too late that the high ground no longer belongs to the mountains or the fortified bunkers beneath them. The high ground belongs to the vacuum of space. So what remains of the forbidden fortress of Hormuz today? It stands as a monument to a dead philosophy, a reminder that in the modern era of warfare, there is no such thing as a hidden target, a secret bunker, or an untouchable position. The Iranian regime must now stare up at a sky they no longer control, searching for threats they cannot detect, waiting for a precision strike they cannot stop and cannot predict. Their space-based reconnaissance capability, 13 satellites, 3 of which were directly operated by the Revolutionary Guard, now drifts as useless debris in orbit. They have no eyes left in space.